Hello programmers, moving on to loops. So you saw basic loop already, and now we're going to implement loop. Loop-de-doop. These are the basic tests, and let's get started. Okay, so var loop. Loop is not a function. Easy to solve that one. Undefined is expected to equal something, so expected something to equal yo. So let's do yo. Input. Let's return our input, and our input here is going to default to F. Undefined, not undefined, though it's nice to define. We're going to say undefined input is input equal to empty string, and then we return it. There we go. So expected yo to equal empty string, expected yo to equal yo. Okay. So given an input and a number of times, I actually wrote the wrong thing here. That's okay. So for I, my variable I is equal to 0 in the beginning, and my variable length is equal to number of times. And in case you're wondering, yes, var I, var length, and var I length are equivalent. What's not equivalent is doing, yes, they're all equivalent. So, and then we do length, I less than length, and I plus plus. I'm just trying to make code pretty here. What's pretty code? To one person is ugly code to another person. But right now it's just me and you. So input, let's call that output. And there we go. Okay. Empty with 0 loops. So start with nothing. There we go. So I start with nothing, and that helps me pass is empty with 0 loops. So number times is 0. I don't even go into this because I less than 0 doesn't pass the conditional, so the for loop doesn't occur. Now we have a join, turns an empty array into an empty string. So given and so let's look up, first things first, let's look up array object, and there's a couple different resources. We have the nice Mozilla developers network here, and it gives you like a little piece of documentation, generally pretty beautiful, well formatted, lots of information, lots of outputs, and it looks like they've even added some compatibility guide here, which can become really useful. So I really like the Mozilla developer reference. I enjoy it. And there's also the W3 Schools, which has been around for a long time and also works quite well. So I want to give you so complete array object reference. This is your friend here. So oh look, there's a join method. So I had a feeling. Join turns an empty array into an empty string, turns an array with one element to a string. Okay. So var join, let's look at the test we're going to be working with. Var join function and array. So now we should get join. Yeah, join is, that error is gone. Now we have a new error. Expected undefined equal. And expected function to equal. There we go. Expected apple banana cherry to equal apple banana cherry. So if we look back here, expected join apple banana cherry to equal apple banana cherry. And so join takes an argument, which is the delimiter. So we can optionally, as our func definition is specifying, delimiter, and then we'll use that if find delimiter, and we'll set our delimiter to be our default. Otherwise, we'll use whatever's passed in. Okay, so I know that there's an error missing a squiggly bracket. The reason why I know there's an error is because my test failed on an unexpected test. So that was it. I used the join method on an array, and we got that. So now we're going to go on to some. Actually, let's go on to sum. Computes the sum of an empty array. Okay, var sum equals function. We're getting the hang of this now. And expect sum to be 0. So let's take a look. Look, there's a test in here that we didn't even skip over because we just wrote with a for loop based on, and we just used the array method, so we didn't have to worry about it. So that's, if we had tried to implement our own method, we might have needed this test. This is a sensible test to have. So we're going to sum, and we're looking at sum. And while I don't suppose JavaScript has something like an inject method, does it? No. Shift. It has this shift thing, which removes the first element of the array. That sounds pretty nice. And it has an unshift, which pops something on. Pop removes the last element and returns that element. Pop sounds like a nice thing. We all have pops, hopefully. Hopefully at least once in our life. And so let's do this. Let's do sum. Give it an array. We're going to have a little loop. So while loop, while an array dot pop is not equal to null. What does pop return? It says this method changes the length of the array. Well, what does pop return on an empty array? Undefined. So that's our starting element. And then we're going to have a while undefined is not equal to element. While element is not equal to undefined. We're going to do this. And we're going to do that. So we're going to pop until we can't pop no more. Pop until you drop. And each time we're going to have a sum, which begins with 0. We initialize our variables. It's very important. And if you catch me not doing that, please send me an email. Sum plus equals element. So I start my while loop. As long as my while loop's not empty, that is, I have something to add it to, enter into it, add it to my sum, so this will execute at least once, and then grab a new element, start the loop back over. When you're all done, return the sum. Run the test. Boom. No problem. So, is there any issue with this method? Yeah, I would say so. This method, let's see, let's add an extra test. It doesn't mutate the original array. So, since I'm a conscientious programmer, I'm writing a little API function, and I know JavaScript works on references. One, 3, 5. Oh yeah, you notice var sum equals, so let's say our expected sum is equal to 4 plus 9. So then we have 9 as our expected sum, and we can say expect sum of array to equal expected sum and then what if I do this? Okay, so I'm creating something that's going to be invariant, and then I'm going to expect that array, after running this method, to equal original. There we go. So I wrote a little extra test. I don't want to mutate the original array. So what did happen here? Well, I got an empty array because my pop method changes the reference. So JavaScript passes everything by reference. So my pop method changed the reference. So here's an example of creating an array. Is there a way to do this? Well, you know what would be nice? Requires JavaScript 1.6. Geez, let's look into that. 1.6. JavaScript 1.6 is supported in Firefox 1.5 and later. And let's find out about Chrome. Stable release 2009 1.8. So it looks like we have some options here. So let's go back here. Take a look at this. Let's map sum, reduce, apply a function simultaneously against two values of the array from left to right as to reduce it to a single value. Well, let's use that instead. And then I'm betting that we're not going to get an error in our test case. So let's take this code out. And array.reduce. And now I'm going to pass in a function. One. Left, right values. Let's look into this. I'm just guessing at this point, so let's check out reduce. Reduce, callback, and initial value. So, previous value, current value, index, and array. So our callback, function to execute on each value of the array taking 4 arguments. Previous value, the value previously returned in the last invocation, or initial value if supplied. Current value, index, current element, in the array that reduce was called upon. So if we say this, previous value, and then current, and then, well, you know, the other ones, they're there, but maybe we don't need them. And then the other thing is we pass in a function and we pass an initial value, 0. That's our initial value. And then we go return previous plus current. And it says previous is going to start out as initial value. So let's try that. Boom, no problem. So not only does this reduce function, even though it's a little bit more complicated, it uses a callback, which is part of our curriculum, uses a callback, but it doesn't mutate the original array in any way, shape, or form. It gives us a little bit more power, and it has extra arguments. But they don't really make a difference in JavaScript if you're not using them. It still matches, still callback still works. The other arguments just aren't bound, or they're basically discarded. And here's our initial value, and that gives you an example of the docs taking some awareness around what version we got here. So you may find, oh, I really like this reduce method, and then you may find like, well, it's not supported in IE 6, and we really have to support IE 6 even though it's completely dead, or maybe it's not supported in IE 7 JavaScript version. Just maybe if we go back to this article, and October 2006, Internet Explorer 7. Yeah, so Internet Explorer is working on version 1.5, so we find that out and we're like, oh man, geez, I'm really glad I have my test case around, because it's what's actually keeping things sane. And I'm like, well, can't use this method, so let's go back to the old standby, our friend the for loop. And write out length. Length is a property, not a method call. And then we'll do I'm like, I want this to look pretty. Notice it's showing me white spaces. Length I is less than length. Then increment I, maybe we'll put that on the same line, plus plus. And then we're going to do sum plus equals an array I. And we might even want to do this. But let's wait, let's not do that. Until we have a test case that says we need that. That's BDD. You have a test case that says you need each line of code, each part of the code. For example, if I comment out this line, I'm like, what, do I really need that line? Oh, wow, I do really need that line. Okay. So if I might be like, well, I want this to work. Gak on that. I have badass fonts. Yeah, that's right. 25. So parse in. So that wouldn't work. We'd have to actually be like value, and then if value, add the value. Remember how nan is false? Strange thing it is. Comes in handy. Boom. So that is loops, and I'm going to go into the next part of loops after this little break. Thank you, programmers.